Welcome to the swamp. My teeth have suddenly turned into fangs, and I've been ripping through and biting every named character in a forgotten Transylvania rip-off woodland while being chased by vampire hunters and making Dracula my bitch. V-Rising is a game I have heard about but skipped for years because I hate isometric games. I see that bird's eye view and I skip, but I kept hearing about how good this survival game is, and I decided to bite the silver bullet and try it out while it was on sale. I went into this game completely blind and was stunned at how amazing it was. So let's jump into this vampire survival game together and see how it is. My name is Excalligator, and I review games using a category-based system built for survival, open world, and RPG titles. Each category is rated on a scale from 1 to 5, and if something doesn't apply to a specific game, it will not affect the overall score. Now let's get started. So I played this game for 100 hours, and not only have beaten the game on normal mode fully, but I have also completed about 3/4 of it again on brutal mode. V-Rising is an open-world vampire survival game where you awaken as a weakened vampire after centuries of slumber and must rebuild your power from the ground up. You gather resources, craft gear, hunt for powerful blood to sustain yourself, and conquer the world one territory at a time. Beware of the sunlight, humans, and monstrous creatures, as well as rival vampires that try to kill you, all while mixing Diablo-style combat with base building, castle construction, and boss-driven progression. The character creation is surprisingly extensive, offering a wide range of customization options. You can tweak anything from your hairstyle to skin color, even a more detailed facial structure, letting you shape it to look more like a feral vampire or a monstrous creature of the night, to an elegant, regal, highborn vampire. With this level of variety and expression, the character creator is going to be a 5 out of 5. The game starts you off in a small cemetery with only a handful of enemies, giving you room to breathe and learn the basic controls before you are thrown into the wider world. This little mini tutorial area is instance, meaning you are completely safe from other players. No spawn camping, especially important if you are playing on a multiplayer server. And of course you can play this game fully solo or co-op with friends if you prefer that quieter start. Now then, in the top left corner, the game gives you a step-by-step progression guide. It begins with simpler tasks like crafting basic tools and teaching you the core mechanics before gradually shifting into a guided path through the first act. Eventually, the system becomes less and less relevant as the game opens up completely, expecting you to explore and experiment and on your own. Once you leave the tutorial zone and enter the first forest area, it becomes dangerous real fast. You'll find enemies at your level, but also creatures and roaming bosses that can reach up to level 30 and sometimes way beyond that. Some mid-game enemies or bosses can wander into the lower level areas. The sunlight will be lethal to you, and bandits patrol the roads. In these early hours, you genuinely feel the survival aspect as you scrape together resources and navigate threats far stronger than you. The beginning of V-Rising nails its introduction, giving you the freedom without overwhelming you and hand-holding the whole time. So, I'm gonna give this section a 5 out of 5. Exploration is absolutely pivotal in this game, both for your progression and gathering essential materials. Technically, you can go anywhere at any time, but each zone has its own level range and enemy difficulty. Act 1 mostly keeps you in the Fairbane Forest, while Act 2 leans more heavily into the farmlands. Act 3 and 4 expand into multiple zones each. That said, mostly is doing a lot of work here. Some bosses, especially vampire hunters, can freely roam between the zones. It's entirely possible for an Act 2 or even an Act 4 boss to walk straight into the starter forest. The world doesn't feel locked down, it feels alive and unpredictable. Each zone comes with its own set of resources, some unique and some shared. Many areas also have sub-zones with concentrated resources. For example, the farmlands have iron spread everywhere, but they're more rare, while 2 specific caves will contain a huge amount of it. Meanwhile, crops like cotton or sunflowers appear only in the human farms and settlements. Beyond the resources, these zones themselves are all visually distinct, each with their own stylistic theme, enemy types, and overworld music. You'll move on from dark forest to a bright farmland, then to an ice-covered mountain, an autumn valley, and a Fallout-styled irradiated wasteland. It's a wide range of tones without any of them feeling copy and pasted. If you watched me before, you already know one of my biggest nitpicks in survival games is creature spawning. I prefer dynamic spawning over static spawning. Fortunately, V-Rising has a solid balance of both. Subzones like camps and villages will use static spawning, so the same enemies will be in the same spot every time. But in the open world, along the roads, and even in the territories that are not occupied by castles, the game uses dynamic spawning, so you'll find enemies and animals, even bosses, in places you haven't seen them before. Even better, sometimes caravans can roam the roads. They're tough to take down, but if you manage it, you are rewarded with a chest full of valuable materials. Speaking of chests, you can find them all over camps and villages. Some of them are guaranteed, others are random, and if you break into a human's house, you can ransack their cupboards, desks, and drawers for extra loot. Sometimes, these interior containers often hold items you will not find on an enemy themselves, or in a standard crate. Pair that with the fact that you can destroy fences, trees, rocks, carts, storage bins. The world becomes incredibly interactive and immersive. Travel also evolves as you progress. Early on, you'll be walking everywhere. Once you defeat the very first boss, you'll unlock the wolf form, which gives you a little bit of a speed boost. From there, you can tame horses, pretty much whenever you can find them. And after beating a certain boss, you can unlock saddle upgrades that increase their speed and endurance. Later in the game, you can even turn your horse into a vampire horse, which is faster and summonable anywhere. Eventually, you'll unlock bat form, allowing you to fly across the terrain, though the sunlight will still be an issue. Other forms like human form and rat form each offer their own benefits, which we'll get into later. Exploration is easily a 5 out of 5 for its sheer freedom, constant incentives to explore, and the meaningful progression of traversal options as you grow stronger. So there's 3 levels of difficulty I like to rate survival games in terms of just the survival mechanics. You have survival that you never really have to worry about food, danger, or conditions. The second level would be the survival matters in the early game but fades later on and is really trivial by the middle game. And the last level would be that the survival and difficulty will stay relevant the entire game. V-Rising is definitely gonna fit into the second category. When you first start off, survival is rough. Your combat stats are low, you barely have any gear, and you're scrambling for resources while constantly having to manage your hunger and ever-present danger of the sunlight. During the day, you'll be weaving through the shadows of trees to avoid burning alive. At nighttime, the world opens up and you can freely roam. Hunger works differently than in most survival games. Instead of food and water, you rely entirely on blood, feeding on animals, humans, and even other vampires to fill your blood gauge. It drains slowly over time, but taking certain hits, using certain spells, and debuffs will make it drop faster. What really sets the system apart is that the blood types and blood quality each give specific bonuses. Warriors will strengthen your melee attacks, rogues boost your speed and crits, while scholars empower your spellcasting, and so on. The quality percentage will determine how strong those buffs are. Now then, you can find higher quality blood in any zone really, but the deeper that you go into the world, the more likely chance you are to find an 80% or a 90%. It's still RNG, but the higher level regions make hunting for the perfect blood a lot more reliable. Later in the game, you can unlock the ability to capture humanoids and extract their blood inside of your castle. This allows you to maintain a steady supply of high quality blood buffs, but it comes with its own minigame. Every time you drain them, they take damage and their misery increases, which causes the next extraction to deal even more damage. You'll have to keep them alive by feeding them the right foods to lower their misery and heal them between the drains. It's a little management system, but it adds depth to the game preparation. Now then, as you progress naturally, you can gain resistances, especially to sunlight, which makes survival much less punishing. By the mid to late game, the harshness of the early survival mechanics fade into the background, and you focus mostly on shifting toward your PvE or PvP goals. Survival becomes more of a flavor element rather than something to worry about. Though with that being said, I am going to give the system a 4 out of 5. It hits hard early on, then eases up in a way that feels earned. You genuinely feel yourself grow stronger the deeper you get into the game with natural progression. The building in V Rising is extensive. You can keep things minimalistic with a relatively small outpost, or go all in and build a full-blown vampire castle straight out of a gothic fantasy. To start your building, you will need to claim an empty territory, one that isn't already claimed by another player, of course. Some territories are smaller and compact, while others are sprawling with multiple levels of elevation, giving you plenty of creative freedom. You won't have access to every building piece right away. Most decorations and structural upgrades are earned by defeating bosses or found through research as you explore the world. Decorating is where the game really shines. You can place statues, fountains, floating lights, braziers, and more. You can fully customize the light color, swap out flooring types, change the wall styles to each room to make them feel unique rather than a copy of the basic starter walls. Once you get rolling, your castle really can look like your castle. Room construction follows a simple logic. A room needs flooring, and it must be fully enclosed, with walls or either a door frame. If you remove a wall, it no longer counts as a room. If you remove an exterior wall, then the ceiling will disappear, exposing you to the sunlight. It sounds technical, but in practice it will click quickly. You can also stack floors and create multi-leveled castles with balconies and elevated walkways. Of course, as your house extends, you can build teleportation devices to quickly move across your layout. For PvE players, your castle is 100% safe. Enemies cannot break walls, raid you, or destroy anything. If a boss or a high-leveled enemy is outside, you can simply walk inside and they will not follow you. PvP, of course, is a different story, and we'll talk about that later on. Rearranging items is incredibly painless. One button lets you move structures instantly, and you can dismantle anything for a full refund of your material. The game never punishes you for wanting to redesign your layout. Now, the crafting boils down to two systems: crafting and refining. You'll need a large castle, even for the minimum number of stations required to progress. The nice thing is that the items you need early on, like refined materials, can often be found later on in the world at higher tiers, reducing the burden of having to craft everything by yourself later on. Stations will start out slow, but there are ways to speed them up. Firstly, they must be placed inside a properly enclosed castle room. Second, that room must be specialized with the correct flooring of the crafting style. For example, a forged place in a room with forged flooring will work significantly faster. This adds a satisfying sense of optimization and encourages real castle planning. The best flooring type is by far the treasury room. Any chest placed inside will automatically link to your entire territory, letting you pull materials from your storage network no matter where you are within your castle grounds. It is an incredible quality of life mechanic that makes organization painless, especially with the different levels of chests you can have in order to store your items, as there are many chests that are specific to types of crafting that all you have to do is click one button and every item associated with that crafting type will be placed in that chest. It even has an auto sort button. Farming is one of the simplest systems in the game. Seeds cannot be harvested from plants, instead you need to find or purchase them, though many of them are rare. Once you have a seed, place them in either a soil patch or a plant pot. Larger plant pots can obviously hold multiple crops. After that, it's completely hands-off. No watering, no fertilizer, just wait and harvest, let it regrow, and then farm it again. Now, farming isn't required for progression, since every plant exists in the world already, but it dramatically lowers the amount of errand runs that you would need to perform. Overall, the building and crafting systems are a major highlight of the entire game, and easily deserve a 5 out of 5 for the sheer creativity and optimization, the ease of rearranging, and the reward systems that come from it. While I did praise the building, the PvE is the absolute highlight of V Rising. I went into this game completely blind, so discovering that it had a deep boss design with a wide cast of characters and unique boss mechanics for every fight was an incredible surprise. Each boss feels distinct, with their own patterns, moveset, phases, and arenas. It was honestly one of the most enjoyable aspects of the game, but before diving deeper into the bosses, let's talk about the overall progression loop. Each act follows a similar pattern. The game gives you just enough early gear to get started of whatever act you are on, while slowly unlocking the upgrades as you advance. You'll gain new weapon types, spells, abilities, gem slots, and armor tiers at a steady pace. Your gear level is going to be the equivalent of your overall level, so the more you upgrade your gear, the higher your level will be. The weapon types are especially fun. Every weapon has a unique identity and playstyle that is suited to either PvE or PvP, not because of raw stats, but because of how they function mechanically. For this playthrough, I leaned more toward PvE, obviously, and the two weapons I settled on were pistols and the scythe. Pistols are great for boss battles since they allow me to easily kite them while weaving in my spells. The scythe, on the other hand, is amazing for cleaving through groups of enemies and gathering resources quickly. Some weapons also specialize in harvesting, so the mace, for an example, is better for stone and minerals, while the axes excel at chopping trees. Though you can use any weapon to gather, you are not restricted to those two just for harvesting. Given, of course, they are the correct tier level, like copper, iron, and silver. Defeating bosses also reward you with spell unlocks. The magic system is divided into different schools, and within each school, there are different tiers that you can choose from as you unlock your spell abilities. Eventually, you'll be able to unlock all of them, and since you can respec at any time, there really is no pressure to commit to one build forever. Each ability also has gem slots that allow you to enhance your spells even further. Gems can be found in the world or crafted. Each gem color corresponds to a specific magic school. When crafting them, you'll get RNG modifiers. Some of them are great and some of them are not so great depending on your build. It adds another level of depth and customization to your playstyle. Now for the boss fights, which are honestly where the game flexes the most. Every single one feels handcrafted with its own unique gimmick, its own patterns, and sometimes its own level of fuck you energy. You don't just mash buttons, you actually need to learn the bosses. You see the tells and figure out the timing, and when you win, you feel like you earned it. It's the kind of game where beating a boss doesn't feel like checking a box, it feels like overcoming a genuine challenge. That being said, there are some bosses that are easier than others, some that I defeated on my first try and others that I had to try like 10 times for. There are a different amount of bosses per act of the game. As your level progresses, you can see more of the bosses in the lineup that are within your level range. The best part is that you are almost never locked out from any boss, with a few exceptions, and you can take them on in almost any order you want. Of course, the closer they are to your level, the easier they will be. Some of the bosses have specific areas you need to fight them in, while others will roam the world. And even then, some of them are a mix of two, where they'll have a specific area they like to sit in, but at times will leave their area and walk the roads. You don't need to kill all of the bosses to beat the game. I would say most of them are crucial to the progression. However, some bosses award things that are more quality of life or additional, so you can easily beat the game without having beaten every single boss. Playing on brutal mode not only increases the health pool of the bosses, but gives each boss an additional ability and sometimes additional phases. A fun example of this is Beatrice the Tailor. She is a boss that really isn't a boss battle herself. Her fight mostly consists of warding off the townsfolk while chasing her down and whittling away her health. But in brutal mode, halfway through the fight, she turns into a demon and will fight back. That definitely caught me off guard when I did my brutal playthrough. Now, of course, even on normal mode, you can have fights that will stump you and have bad RNG, and it will frustrate you and make you rage. I know I did whenever I got a boss to 1 health and then I died to something stupid. All in all, I'm gonna rate this section a 5 out of 5 for being excellent in pretty much all aspects. So I'll be honest, I didn't play on a PvP server. I opted to play on a smaller co-op server where we had some PvP encounters with each other, but for my opinion on this video on the PvP section, I had to consult a different friend of mine who did play on a large PvP server. So if I get anything wrong or mistranslated, please forgive me. Anyway, the PvP in V Rising is completely different from the PvE experience, shifting the game from a boss hunting action RPG into a full-on territory war. On PvP servers, players can raid each other's castles, steal resources, and fight for server dominance. Raiding can be tied to designated raid windows depending on the server settings, so your base isn't under threat 24/7, but during those windows, it is all-out chaos. To breach another player's castle, you will need explosive for the weaker ones, of course, or a siege golem, which you could transform into a golem after creating a certain item. As a golem, you can physically smash through stone defenses, opening the way for your clan to push inside. Defending your castle is a strategic meta of its own. Your castle heart must stay fueled with blood essence. If it runs low, your home becomes vulnerable. Layout matters a lot in PvP. Players will expand outward, stacking multiple layers of walls, create long honeycomb corridors, and make choke points in order to slow raiders down. Servants and traps can also help hold attackers off, and from what I've seen in the community posts, they say that the defense meta can be pretty intense and sometimes repetitive, as many bases end up following the same optimized ideal layout to survive the raiding system. It reminds me a lot of the Conan Exiles PvP a bit, with the layered foundations and honeycombing walls. The actual PvP combat is fast, chaotic, and skill-based, but the experience can vary wildly depending on who you're fighting. Larger clans can tend to dominate fresh servers, wiping larger groups repeatedly and creating an uphill battle for newer or solo players. Some players report that the raid loop can feel punishing, others love the high-stakes nature of it, and claim that the strategic planning and castle optimization are some of the most satisfying in the competitive elements of the game. Now, if you want to experience PvP in a safer, stress-free way, you can do what I did with my friend and play on a PvE server, with a designated location to be your PvP arena. Using certain items in the crafting menu of your castle layout, you can create a combat zone for players. You can have teams, and optionally add in healing orbs. The game ends when everyone else is down. You can also feel how the weapon and spell choice will matter differently from how you would play PvE. Overall, PvP in V Rising is deep and well designed, but definitely not for everyone. I'm gonna rate it a 4 out of 5. It's best played when you're in a coordinated group on a server with balanced populations. Solo players or casual clans may find the system overwhelming. The music of this game, I wouldn't say is iconic. I don't really know anyone who uses or talks about the music of V Rising, but that's not to say it's bad. Every zone in its world has its own day and night theme, which generally are more calming, my favorite being the Farmlands theme, the Song of Dunley. It reminds me of the music from the Skellige Isles in Witcher 3. The bosses unfortunately all share the same theme song. Now the theme song itself is cool and it sets the mood for the battle, but I wish they had different themes, at least between the different acts. Only 2 bosses have their own theme, the final boss Dracula and Simon Belmont from the Castlevania DLC, whose theme is based on music from the original Castlevania game, which I love his theme, by the way. You've probably heard it in the background of this video. Being this far in the review, I don't remember if I mentioned it or not, but you can set your castle to have any song that you've unlocked. So you'll unlock like a music player, and as you progress in the world and visit different zones, you can unlock that music to play in your castle. I almost always have the Farmland song and the Silver Hills song as my castle's theme, while my second castle, which is where my PvP takes place, will always have the boss theme and Simon's theme playing. I'm gonna give this section a 4 out of 5. I wish the bosses had a bit more variety with their theme songs, and most of the music isn't really that memorable, but it is well made and sounds really nice. The story is not going to be rated because V Rising simply isn't a story-driven game. There are no quests, no cinematics, and barely any dialogue to guide you. But the reason I'm still including this section is because there is lore, it just exists entirely in the background. Most of the world building will come from the boss menu. Every character you defeat has a short biography that explains who they are and where they come from, what role they play in the world as well. It's not a full narrative experience, but it does give the setting some texture and personality if you take the time to read it. So again, while there is something there for players interested in the world's history, V Rising isn't built around the story progression, and because of that, this section will not be getting a score. I rate the endgame in two different ways: the last stretch of the game before the final boss, and after the final boss. Before the finale, I would say that the game amps up, the bosses are harder, you grind up what you can to get the final armor set, and you're given really powerful amulets from the last 4 bosses. However, because they are so strong, they will degrade over time with use. But with the tension build up in combination with the Dracula fight himself, it is amazing. Now with the post game, there really isn't much left to do in the game except for building and customizing your castle. There is of course world PvP, if you are on a PvP server that is, and if you skipped any of the bosses you can go back to them. Or if you like to collect special and cool cosmetic items and gear, there are plenty of items in the world that are rare and can make you stand out amongst your friends. Like how I found this green serpent cloak or whatever it was called that my friend had never seen before, and I got it just by looting a chest in a human city. Though with the lack of post-game content, I will just rate the section a 4 out of 5. This section is a bit tricky to score because V Rising sits in an unusual place for a live service survival style game. The game is fully released as about a year ago, and since then it's received one major content update along with smaller cosmetic DLC packs. The DLC packs are optional and purely cosmetic for the skins, wardrobe, spell effects, and castle pieces. More importantly though, any of the new bosses that are tied to these updates were added to the base game for free. A good example of this is Simon Belmont. Even though his update came with a cosmetic DLC, the actual boss fight and mechanics were included at no extra charge. The same goes for the new zone, Oakvale, along with all of the mid to late game bosses that were added there. Everything integrated into the game seamlessly and tied into the already existing progression. One thing to keep in mind is that official servers have been known to wipe with each major update, which can affect you if you're playing on a major PvP or long-term PvE official server. Private servers or solo servers are not affected as far as I know, though I'm not for sure. As for the future, the roadmap is unclear. There is no publicly announced plan ongoing for the upcoming content, and if major updates only drop once per year, the game could start to feel a little bit dry between the patches. That said, the developers have a strong track record so far, and the game is fully released with a complete satisfying ending. Taking everything into account, I'm going to give this section a 4.5 out of 5. The game runs very well overall. During my entire playthrough, I didn't really experience any crashing or major bugs. However, I did run into an occasional frame drop here and there and some lag spikes, even in single player mode, which is a little strange. Sometimes while traveling or mid-fight, my character would briefly rubber band or have delayed input. While these moments were definitely annoying, they didn't feel responsible for the majority of my deaths. Maybe once or twice I can remember the input delay causing me to miss a dodge or an ability during a boss fight, but that's a tiny fraction, maybe 5% of all the times I've actually died. With that in mind, I'm going to give the optimization a 4 out of 5. The game runs very well, but those occasional spikes and input hiccups are worth being aware of. My overall score for V Rising is going to be a 4.5 out of 5. The game delivers a polished and satisfying vampire survival experience with strong progression, excellent boss battles, and some of the best base building in the genre. Exploration feels meaningful, the early game survival challenge is engaging, and the transition into late game power is smooth and rewarding. While the story isn't a focus and the roadmap isn't certain, the game itself still offers a complete and enjoyable package, with plenty to sink your teeth into. Now then, I know I said that this review was gonna not be late, but I ended up getting really sunk into that brutal mode, so if you want to see my playthrough of the brutal mode of V Rising, please check out my gaming channel, Excalligator Gaming, where I'm gonna start posting those videos, along with all my other playthrough videos, some Ark Survival Evolved, some Conan Exiles, and even a little bit of Minecraft now. I've actually gotten back into that game. So if you enjoyed what you like, please stick around for the outro, and I will see you next time. And that is the end of this video. If you enjoyed this review, make sure to subscribe. I'll be diving into more in-depth reviews of open-world sandbox RPG games, including ones no one ever talk about, buried deep in the darkest corners of Steam. Some of them even look like the muck at the bottom of my pond. For pure gameplay content, check out my second channel, Excalligator Gaming, where I post full narrated playthroughs, funny shorts, and streams. Do you have a game that you think I should cover next? Drop it in the comments below. Florida Gatorman out.